Okay, folks, it is showtime. It is 7 o'clock, and welcome to the first of 3 webinars this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, our wild turkey hunting webinar series. And God, this year went by so fast. I remember doing it last year. So tonight it is the biology for hunters, regulations, where to hunt and scouting. And moving on, we'll find out here who are tonight's panelists. Okay, tonight we actually have 3 of the 4 people that will be speaking. We have Chris Turner. He's new to our webinars, Game Birds Wildlife Health Unit Supervisor. He'll be covering biology and Q&A. John Henry Harrelson will be here tomorrow night. He's a District 4 wildlife biologist, hunting Q&A. Master Officer Eric Gleason with our Law Enforcement Division, Laws, Regs, and Q&A. And obviously me, your host, Hunter Engagement Coordinator, hunting Q&A and running the slides most of the time, but not all the time. As many of you know already, our logistics overview goes as follow, and that's for anybody that's attended in the past. 1-hour webinar, it is recorded, and it is distributed in equal to or less than 2 weeks. It needs to be pulled from the cloud, and one of our other staff have to do that. So as I always say, please be patient. It's not available right away. Then a Q&A, 30 minutes long. Questions in writing only, topic specific for tonight's topics, because we'll be covering a lot of stuff the next 2 nights, and obviously addressed at the Q&A, not during the webinar. If we did it during the webinar, we would totally run out of time. Chat hand raising will not be monitored. Our goal for you is to focus on the content and not be writing other than writing questions. And with that, please allow us to cover the material before writing questions. A lot of times folks will start writing questions right off the bat, and it's things that we're going to be covering. There will, as always, be a brief programmatic justification, the why behind it all. And that's because basically 40 years ago, there were no state or federal agencies doing programming. This is being done for a reason, and I'll be quick with it, but we want you to know why. And obviously, if you apply the 3 L's tonight, look, listen, and learn, you'll be well on your way to getting started. The link to our website and the Regulations Digest is up on the screen. Obviously, that is not a digest you can use. It's just a picture, but you get a copy of that. And between that and our website, you can pretty much find out everything regulations related, laws and local laws, game lands laws. And the only thing you'll be getting from us that you can't get in there is skills. There are no hunting skills there. So believe me, let your fingers do the walking first on the website and the Regs Digest to be prepared for the season. And again, thanks for joining us tonight. Obviously, this is the reason. It was the precipitous decline over a number of years. Started really in the 90s. Not going to give you any numbers. You can see there that brought programming to us, and that's basically a decline in hunting participation. Well, there was an uptick in the most recent 5 year. We finally had it out. So it was 14.4 million, age 16 and older participated in hunting. So that basically takes us back to about 1990-ish levels. But the reality is, as some of the folks that are in this realm are talking, is that a COVID uptick, or is it a trend? And so that remains to be seen. So I guess we'll find out 5 years later. Looking at North Carolina, as you may know, again, from the past, roughly 700,000 license holders, but only half as many participate. And within those license holders are lifetime licenses. People will sometimes buy them for infants, as a gift. They may or may not use them, but about 300,000 that actually participate. And that is the ones that are really out there. And the support for hunting. So looking at North Carolina as a whole, our population continues to grow, as many of you know, especially if you live in some urban areas with new development. And when you're looking now, the participation line looks much lower, as does the license. One good thing about that hunter participation line is at least it's somewhat stable. License, again, buyers continue to increase. Numbers are stable. That's a good thing for a recruitment, retention, reactivation person. But the real concern is our percentage of people that hunt. So for example, I did the math for 2021, roughly 300,000 hunters divided by, at that time, 2021, 10.6 million North Carolinians, and that represents 2.9% of the population overall, or roughly 3. So stabilization is good, but so is political support. We don't want to get to the point where, hey, who hunts? Does it really matter? We say hunting matters. The other thing that is also a concern is people like myself. I'm 63 years old. As we reach that magical age, the baby boomer generation, we start dropping off. And one thing about that generation, it, as I say, represented in the past, the largest number of modern day hunters of all time. And once they go away, it's going to leave a big dent. So that's another reason why we want to keep that political support, and we also want to continue to have hunters. Obviously, these are the things I'm involved, both webinars that used to be in-person seminars. COVID took away from the in-person seminars. But as I say, COVID inspired deep desired with the webinars, because people can do like you're doing and watching it from their home right now. Then there's the workshops that are for those that really need it, formerly called GSO, but is now called Learn to Hunt. And some of you already know we're using that term instead. Those workshops are for the very brand new folks, whereas the webinars are for all skill levels, beginners and experienced folks. The workshops are for those that typically haven't even shot firearms. They don't know anything about tree stands. They don't know how to scout. They don't know how to recover game. So it's to help those that need it most. And these are basically experiments to offset participation decline, and only time will tell whether they're going to work or not. As you may have seen, I know I sent this to a lot of people, but all that programming you can see on the right there of the screen is already established. And I will likely send this when I send the post-webinar survey that has the registration link that obviously you're already aware of because you're here tonight, but also how to search for all of those. And always review the event summaries, because the workshops do have attendance requirements and prerequisites. So we're geared up for this year. 30 different events already completed, those turkey in-person minis, and obviously working on the webinars now. Always trying to look for new help. I'm a one-man band, as many of you folks know, that if you've been around, and I rely primarily on volunteers. And as I'm expanding, I am having growing pains. So if you're an experienced hunter and you're interested in assisting, or even a new hunter that's interested in being involved in logistics, you know, at like a workshop, always looking for help. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Chris, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of discussing wild turkey biology with you tonight, because it's very important as a turkey hunter to know a lot about what you're hunting. You know, we'll take a look at the world of the wild turkey when it comes to their biology, to have a better understanding of exactly what you're looking for. A little bit better understanding of what turkeys are as a very unique bird species, and what they do and what it takes to manage turkeys, both in the state and on private lands as well, when it comes down to habitat needs of this bird. So just wanted to start out talking about the term gobbler. That is the male of the species. Some people call them a tom turkey. They're a good sized bird. They can be close to over 3 feet tall and can weigh over 20 pounds. Eastern wild turkeys, which is what we have on the eastern part of the United States, certainly can get over 20 pounds. The younger birds, which we call a jake, the immature gobblers, are somewhere around 15 pounds. So we'll get a little bit more into that in just a few minutes. Key identification on turkeys, when you're talking about gobblers, is that they have a beard. You can see on the front of the bird, there's a set of feathers hanging down, very unique feathers that hang down as a beard. They have a white or red head, and spurs on their legs which they use for defense, primarily against each other when they're fighting, and against predators as well. Certainly is very important to remember that spurs are very sharp, and when you go to grab your first turkey after harvesting it, you got to watch the spurs. So one thing that really stands out about turkeys is their metallic sheen. You can see the sun shining on them. Gobblers actually have a black tip to their feathers. Their breast feathers are black tipped and squared off on the end. So this is a pretty good picture of what you might see if you're hunting in the woods and have a gobbler come walking through. You see the sun shining on them. A lot of times that's the first thing you might see is a glimpse of the metallic sheen of their feathers. Again, this is a really good picture. This is the kind of thing that you really want to see as a turkey hunter. You can see the beard on two gobblers coming in together. These are older gobblers, mature birds. You can see the long, heavy beard. And if you look real closely at the one on the left, you can actually see one of his spurs. He's got long spurs, which is comes with a mature bird. So this is the kind of thing that you really want to see. You can see how black the bird is. You know, they really appear dark. When you're calling a turkey, we're hunting during the spring hunting season. That is a time that you will see birds that are intent on breeding hens, and they can be identified very well when they're strutting. You can see the bird here is got his tail feathers spread out. He's all puffed up, made himself look really large. They are always trying to attract hens by their appearance. You also see their white head and red caruncles on their neck, the fleshy growths there. The red little part that's hanging down over his nose is called a snood. That's also red, and also they can change colors when they get excited or aggressive towards each other, or they're trying to attract a hen. So hunters have to keep in mind that when a gobbler is attracting hens, he's gobbling for the hen. So the hen typically goes to the gobbler, and what you will see is the gobbler respond to her by strutting. It's important to keep in mind that what we're trying to do by calling in a gobbler is very, very different than what happens in nature. So that is, I think, where the real challenge comes on when we are trying to call in a gobbler, because it's very, very different than what happens in the gobbler's world when the hen comes to him. So you saw a gobbler with a full tail fan. The full tail fan is the sign of an adult bird. If you see a gobbler with his tail fan out and the upper part of it is lifted up and raised up higher than the rest of it, that is a younger bird. That is a Jake turkey. So that's an immature gobbler. They molt their tail feathers starting with the middle feathers, and they don't get a full molt until they're 2 years old. So that's why the tail feathers are raised up in the middle of a Jake. And you'll see this when they strut, they're easily identified as Jake, young turkeys, young gobblers. So beard length also is a part of what you see and identify mature gobblers. Jakes have a shorter beard. Birds that are 1 year old have a beard that's typically less than 7 inches. Older birds have longer beards, and they grow continuously, but the beard is not always a good indication of how many years old the bird is, because they wear those beards off when they're feeding and walking and dragging on the ground. Spur length, this is the spur that we talked about, also goes with age. You see on a 1 year old Jake, it's a very short spur. By the time they're 2 years old, they're almost an inch long typically, and a 3 year old or older bird is typically an inch or longer. So it's hard to say exactly how old a gobbler is by its spur length, but it's always a good indication in determining what's a jake and what's a mature bird. Again, you might not typically see this, but the primary feathers, the flight feathers of a gobbler, typically when a bird is older, they will strut and drag their wings on the ground and wear those feathers down. You can see a younger, a juvenile adult bird on the left doesn't have the barring all out to the tips. So then we get to hen turkeys. Hen turkeys appear very different than a gobbler because they're buffy brown. Their feathers typically have a buffy tip on them, especially their breast feathers, so they appear brown as compared to a black gobbler. Female turkeys are smaller than the gobblers. They weigh about half that. 8 to 12 pounds is probably more typical. You can see the buffy tip there. Some hens actually have a beard, so that is somewhere around 5% of the hen population could show a beard. In North Carolina, a bearded bird is a legal bird, but you always have to keep in mind that the value of the hen is in reproduction. So you have to decide if you would take a bearded hen or not. Certainly, the value of that hen is high in the population. So that's typically people wait on gobblers as what they're trying to hunt, but certainly could go the other way as well. That's a decision you have to make. There's another bearded hen. Turkeys are extremely wary. You can see a lot of times this is what you'll see. You'll see a bird come walking in looking. It's typical that they have their head raised, and you see the eye. That is the key to their survival. They see everything around them. They can actually see 360 around them. So if you're turkey hunting, you have a bird coming in and their head's not obscured, they can see you from the front and from the back. Some people wonder if turkeys can fly or not. They actually roost in trees. And one of the things that's helpful as a hunter is to find roosting areas. Typically, you'll hear birds gobble from the roost early in the morning, and that's a good way to kind of figure out where you're going to hunt. But it's important to remember that roosted is not roasted. Just because you know where a bird's roosted doesn't mean that you're gonna put them in the bag. So this is a real challenge when it comes to hunting turkeys off the roost. We get more into the turkey biology. Reproduction of our turkeys is limited by brood habitat. Those are the areas that when the young turkeys hatch and are able to travel with the hen, those are the areas that they can feed heavily on insects for the first 2 weeks as they grow quickly, and they're able to fly within about 2 weeks when they can roost in trees with the hen. So once they're able to roost in trees with her, then their survival goes up dramatically. I think one of the things that's important to remember is turkeys live in wooded areas, certainly, but they need openings. We can manage openings as brood habitat to help increase survival and productivity of our turkey flocks. In the wintertime, which is when you may see a lot of birds together, they flock up in family groups that combine with each other, and they actually create pecking orders where the dominant birds show their dominance, and as they do that, they establish their pecking order that contributes to their breeding success and their survival as well. So a lot of times you may see groups of gobblers that are together, particularly in the wintertime. You'll get bachelor groups that are putting pecking orders together. The survival of gobblers and hens in the wintertime is relatively high. And as flocks begin to break up in the spring, you actually start to see some of the pecking orders that are established start to take place as the gobblers begin to break up for breeding. So the springtime is the time that we all look forward to. It's very important for both turkeys and turkey hunters. And turkeys, it's important to remember that gobblers don't establish a breeding territory like some animals. They actually establish their dominance over other gobblers by strutting and gobbling and through the pecking order that was established in the winter. So gobblers mate with as many hens as possible, and once they breed with the hen, the hen can lay all the eggs she's going to lay through the summer from that one breeding. When it's time to lay, the hen lays one egg a day and will lay 10 to 12 eggs in a clutch of eggs and incubate those eggs for about 25 to 28 days. So that all the poults are born at the same time. The eggs all hatch at the same time because incubation doesn't start until all the eggs are laid. So one of the things, like we said, you see a gobbler here that is displaying for the females, for the hens, and his goal is to attract one of those hens to him and to have her lay down as a sign that she is ready to be bred. And that's the process that they go through time and time again through the spring. Once the hen is bred, within a few days, she will lay the first egg. She'll establish a nest on the ground, and like I said, they'll lay 10 to 12 to 14 eggs, and by the time they're all laid, she starts to incubate. And after 25 to 28 days, you get the young turkeys that hatch. They come out of the egg and they're imprinted on the hen, so that they will follow her wherever she goes. And they have that time together, and within a few hours they leave with her. So it's very very precise way that our populations continue through the spring breeding. Gobbling is always a key thing that turkey hunters talk about, because it's really what drives us, I think. When we hear a bird gobble, we know where he's at. When we hear a bird gobble, we know that that's one that we might want to pursue. So the gobbling of birds is very important. The Wildlife Commission over the last few years, we've done some work to look at gobbling intensity and gobbling frequency and the timing of gobbling across the state by putting acoustic recorders out over 94 locations in the state over 3 different springs and summer periods. By doing that, we can have an idea of gobbling chronology, when gobbling starts and when it tapers off. So that's a very important part of answering some questions that we need to answer in order to effectively manage turkeys long term. For a turkey hunter, I think the one thing that's very important to remember is when you look at when the gobbles occur during the day, you can see the best time to be in the woods is when most gobbles occur if you're trying to locate a gobbler, and that is certainly within the first 30 minutes of daylight. After that, everything starts to fade down, but early morning is a great time to hear birds gobble and to start a hunt on a bird. We talk about home range. They don't have territories, but turkeys do have home ranges. That's the area that they use that comprises all the habitat that they use both daily and annually. Daily during the springtime, you might be looking at 350 acres that they use. In the wintertime, when they're wintering together in big flocks, you're looking at maybe less than 100 acres that they use intensely. And then annually they're using thousands of acres, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 acres that they use to meet their habitat needs through the entire year. That includes the critical time during the summer when they need brood range in order to raise their poults. So this is a pretty good example in the mountains. You see forest, older forest, and you also see pasture land and old field. These are critical for turkey needs year round. Another picture, probably more of a coastal picture, you see a forest, and you also see open herbaceous areas, old field type areas that are critical both in the winter through the rest of the year, and particularly in the summer when the hens are raising poults. Prescribed fire is very important when it comes down to brood habitat, which is what's so critical for poult survival. So habitat management is critical when it comes down to continuing to enjoy our wild turkeys across the state, whether you're in the mountains, the Piedmont, or on the coast. As hunters, I think one other thing that we always have to think about is, how do you find turkeys? We can go out and listen for birds. We can see turkeys in the winter and establish where we might want to start looking for turkeys. But turkey tracks, turkey droppings are very important. You can see on the left, it's a hen. It's more of a clump. Gobblers typically make a J-shaped dropping. So when you see that, you know you've got a male birds in the area. You also are looking for scratching in the ground where turkeys feed by scratching the leaves. That's something to always look for in the winter as a way to focus your efforts in the spring. Real quickly, the history of turkeys in North Carolina is very long. We almost extirpated our turkeys from across the state. By 1970, we had about 2,000 turkeys left statewide. But after decades of restoration, after over 6,000 birds were stocked across the state on 358 restoration sites, we actually have a well-established turkey flock at this time. We've seen our turkey harvest fluctuate. The last 3 years have been high years. 2022, we took almost over 20,000 birds statewide. But we certainly have seen annual ups and downs in our turkey harvest. So we'll see what 2024 holds this year. Finally, hunter success is more than killing a turkey. As you go turkey hunting, you'll find that all of these things are important. Seeing and hearing turkeys, working a bird. If you hear a bird and you actually work a gobbler, whether you take them or not, you've had a really good day. The camaraderie of other turkey hunters and telling the stories are just a key part of turkey hunting. It's why so many people love it. It's not just killing a bird. It's about all these things together. So long term, we'll continue to work on habitat management. We don't just hunt turkeys in the spring. We manage for them year round. So we always need to be knowing what turkeys need when it comes to their requirements, and we can provide those things on our private land and on our public lands as well. So that's what I have today. I've enjoyed talking about turkey biology with you, and I look forward to hearing some of your stories after this turkey season.
Very awesome job, Chris. Thank you. And let me go the right way. Okay, folks, we're going to start out with some laws and regs, or as I say, keep it safe, legal, and ethical. And obviously, Eric will be here for Q&A at the end, and I usually run over the overview of the regs per each year right up front. And of course, as you will discover in the Regs Digest, it changes, depending on the calendar and the calendar year, the page that it's on. But these are the primary regulations. And obviously you also want to check out manner of take. Let your fingers do the walking first. So you can see I already put the page in 59, male or bearded turkey only. As Chris pointed out, hen is legal, but we tend to reserve the hens. And the main reason it was done that way is for, say, maybe a new young hunter. They get really excited, they want to see the bird, and they're not paying attention to the whole bird. And so that's why it was made, so that, from what I understand, that way they wouldn't be sighted. But we say we like to keep the hens, so try to make sure it's a male bird. Use season April 6 Saturday through April 12. adults statewide, obviously April 13th through May 11th, and it shifted a whole week this year. So that actually changed it. Daily limit is 1 and only 1 during youth week. Possession season, how many you can have in your freezer, is 2. No dogs or electronic calls, and that is in there along with artificial lights and electronic calls, page 56 and 57. So that includes your mobile device. You know, you can get these apps now that'll gobble and cluck and purr. That's illegal. You're supposed to do it yourself. No handguns or rifles, only shotguns and archery equipment. Knowingly take wild turkeys from within 300 yards of any place in which bait has been placed. Area is considered baited until 10 days after consumed or otherwise removed. Just a little example of that. It was at a Raleigh seminar. I'll never forget it. Probably 5 to 8 years ago. Someone said, I'm hunting on my own property. I do not bait, but the neighbor baits. Well, the reality is, if you can see that bait where you're hunting, as you can see, 300 yards away, if you can see it and you hunt there, even though it's your land, you're in violation because there's bait there. So you may have a discussion with somebody if you want to hunt that area. Cannot possess live wild turkeys or live birds indistinguishable from wild turkeys, and obviously hunter orange not required. Birds can see color, although it is a good practice if ever you're carrying a gobbler to display orange. And/or I'll even oftentimes wear an orange hat while I'm moving, doing my cut and run and before I set up, even though it's not required by law. I'm not going to read over this. It's too much text, but the big game harvest reporting is on page 58 of the Regs Digest. I expect you to review it. And the reality is now you can either do it on the app, on our Go Outdoors app, or a paper version. And I will just say here that if you're going to use a paper version, I prefer to do that. I'm an old timer. I like the paper. I'll use that consistently. If you're going to use the app, use it consistently. That way you have one record. And then obviously this needs to be done, meaning tagged, as soon as you harvest that bird, before you even move it. And then you want to call it in the next day by noon. And again, all that is in the Regs Digest. Review it. The big difference this year is there is no harvest ID. You're basically going to get a confirmation number on your tag. So the harvest ID isn't there anymore. And the big other thing that a lot of folks don't know is if you're a landowner, you're license exempt, or if you are under 16, a youth, you are also license exempt. You still need a license exempt big game harvest report card. So in other words, for folks that have, say, children, for example, and the children are harvesting game and the adult is using the tag, you're in violation. They need their own tags. And the best way to get them is by calling that number. That too is in the Regs Digest. So please review that.
May I add something?
Yes,
really
absolutely. Absolutely.
That app is designed to work whether you...
Okay, not hearing you right now, Eric.
Oh, it lost me there. It cut me out. But that app is designed to work whether you have cell phone service or not. So when you hit the button on the app to tag your bird, even if you don't have service, it's going to timestamp what time you hit that, and then it will transmit it when you get back to service. So that app will work whether you have service or do not have cell phone service.
There you go. And thanks for reminding me. I'll be sure to mention that at this weekend's workshop. So thanks. Yeah, I knew that, but totally forgot about it. I may even write something on there. So 1 male or bearded turkey per day, NC law. Avoid crippling losses, flock shooting, allow hens to get out of the way. And I think you might be able to see my cursor on this screen. Can you see it, Eric and Chris? Yes. My cursor moving around? No? If you can't see here, how about over here? No?
Yeah, I see it. I see it.
All right. Okay. That right there is not a good shot. That's a killing shot for 3 birds. This one potentially, especially if you're close, because the hen's kind of out of the way, but you want to make sure that the hens are out of harm's way. This would never be a gobbler shot. They're too close together. You don't want to kill more than 1 bird. And a lot of folks sometime would look at this one and say, yep, this is good. But if you look back here, that's another tail fan. And believe me, you will get excited. It's not like going through the drive-through and saying, give me a number one and supersize it. When you see these birds coming in, your heart's going to be pounding. Take your time, take your shot, wait till the birds separate. Extremely important. Turkey hunting safety is especially critical. Sadly, well, I'll get to that point in a second. Always, always positively identify your target before you shoot. As I say, I'm a funny looking guy, but I don't look like a turkey. You make your position known to other hunters. In other words, you're set up in the woods, sitting against a tree. You're not dug under the leaves or buried yourself in the ground. Never stalk a turkey or turkey sound. For one thing, you'll never get close to it. And another turkey sound could be another hunter. Assume every noise, movement is another hunter. Why? Turkeys are bipedal. They have two legs just like us. We can sound like a turkey and they can sound like us. We typically protect our back by sitting up against a tree as wide as our shoulders whenever possible. If a hunter is approaching, don't wave, don't make a turkey call, don't rustle in the leaves, just shout stop or say hunter over here, don't even move, hunter over here. It rarely happens, but it can. Eliminate all those colors, as Chris pointed out, because all those colors exist on the body of a wild turkey. Pre-select your zone of fire, and I always say to folks, and you'll hear more about it tomorrow, if you have discovered your firearm's maximum effective range, you already know your zone of fire, and make sure the only thing in that zone of fire is a legal wild turkey and not something else, not movement or not shooting through the brush. Obviously, choose only safe and ethical hunting partners, practice courtesy and self-control at all times. You're not the only one out there. And as always, respect other hunters. Again, you're not the only one enjoying the resource. And, a lot of times, if you notice it's a small tract of land, like public land, there's somebody already there. Keep in mind that when you're deer hunting, if you're out of sight, you're okay. Hunters typically don't move around. They're in a tree stand. But when it comes to a turkey in a small tract, if everybody can hear that bird and there's a bunch of people in there, everybody's going to move towards it. So always have a plan B, C, or D, or be there first. And as a general rule, most hunters are courteous. This is a situation that actually occurred in my home state about 3 years ago. It was a cousin of a friend of mine. And when he told me about it, he said he saw the x-ray, and I asked him if I could share it as a training tool. And obviously, this was from a turkey VHS where they said in 1991, there were 175 turkey hunting related incidents nationwide, of which 10 were fatal. And that was mistaken for game. There was absolutely no excuse. And in this case, this person was carrying decoys, exposed decoys, which shouldn't be a problem. There's a human carrying them. He was calling at the same time, and there was somebody that was hunting from a truck. And the brush was relatively thick. The guy the person must have saw maybe the redhead on a decoy fired. And that is not one way that you want to get 28 pellets in the head and neck region. And it basically ruined him for the next year hunting. He didn't even want to hunt. So these things are extremely rare, especially today, where most hunting incidents are falls from tree stands. But carelessness leads to incidents, and it's not an accident. It's an incident. There's no reason for it to be an accident. So where to hunt? Number one question from folks, and as I pointed out originally, it's all in the Regs Digest. And our goal as a resource agency is to connect you to resources. I always like to say that my days of yore trip Alabama started with a Pennsylvania Gazetteer and a road atlas. And I would write down every stop sign, every turn on that map, every road sign, and I held that sheet in my hand. Of course, it was probably bad. I wasn't paying attention to the road, but it was right in my face. Nowadays, you have this. And as I often say, it's like the old Prego spaghetti sauce slogan. It's in there. And between that Regs Digest and the website, especially, all the information you need is in there. And now with the navigation apps that I'm going to talk about, you don't need those gazetteers anymore or a roadmap. Just a couple of private land tips. Don't necessarily promote private land hunting. We don't keep a list of private landowners, but just some things I learned over the years from hunting in my home state. Always request a permission off season. There's nothing wrong with that bottom picture to the right, but it's actually kind of telling that landowner, and of course they perhaps knew one another there, that, hey, I'm ready to hunt and you're going to give me permission today. You go on the off season and say, you know, hey, my name's so-and-so, you know, there's no expectation, and start talking to them. Respect their time. Don't wear them down. I know I myself get wordy. And if you wear them down, they're not going to want you around there. They typically have things to do. Offer incentive, chores or maintenance on the property. That oftentimes can get you in. Also, say for species, I was used to getting hunting opportunity and access for groundhogs because farmers didn't like them. They were digging holes in their fields. And then sometime that would lead to something else like deer or turkey. Respect the property and others. No gates open, no trash, you know, things like that. Common sense. Don't expect permanent access. Make sure you go back and ask every year, you know, because you always have to maintain that relationship. And unlike 50 years ago, you know, I've been hunting deer for 53 years, so probably almost 60 years since I hunted, is now there is that concern over liability. We live in a litigious world, and hunters, just Google it, hunter liability insurance, and you can get your own insurance relatively cheap. And that is when you're having that conversation and, hey, listen, you don't need to worry about liability. I'm going to be safe. I have hunter education and everything. I also have hunter liability insurance. And that may be the difference. That may be all it takes. Again, just some tips. Okay, so getting to our website. I want to make sure I didn't pop that through. Yep. Easy as going along that black bar, hunting and all those things. Hunting in North Carolina, before the hunt, after the hunt, where to hunt and shoot. It's that easy. And these maps that are on our website now are far better than they used to. We have the used to be. I mean, usually you had to load just some plain download PDF or a paper map or go to USGS or whatever. Some people probably still do. But this interactive map and these downloadable geo-reference PDFs are awesome. And I'm going to move along here to get more about it. But as you can see, as you'll see in the slides, the interactive map, full thing, show all the game lands. You can change the base map, everything else. And these PDFs are for like the mountain region, Piedmont, coastal. And with a phone app, which you will also see here in the slides, you basically got a handheld GPS on your mobile device. So there, pulling up the initial map, you can see all those game lands diamonds. Obviously, those big colored areas are relative to CWD areas, primary and secondary zones. So they're automatically on the map. Start out with that. You can change the base map. And right there, you can see where it says change base map, and you got to get in there and play around with it a little bit, but it is pretty user-friendly. Get right down in the topography maps, and you can see there's an example of the Uwharrie game lands. And what's really neat about these too is, unlike maps in the past, is you already know when you move your cursor around, right there are the GPS coordinates. And I tend to use them even over like street addresses because they're more accurate. So here we have an example of those mountain region PDF geo-reference maps, all the different game lands. And I've hunted many of these. I prefer the mountains. There's a picture of one of them. You print it out. I usually like to have a hard copy, and you can see it as a legend. And typically our game lands are marked by a diamond, which sometimes gets fallen off or blown off, or the tree gets knocked over, and 2 orange bands. And I will say, as a disclaimer, is there are some areas, I've seen them in a state where they are missing. Maybe the tree blew down, crew's working on it, but maybe they didn't get to them right away. Well, if you have those PDFs for the game lands in Avenza, you always know where the border is because you can see when you're on and off. So getting back to the enforcement thing, there's really no excuse anymore for, hey, I didn't know, I didn't see the boundary signs, or I didn't see the lines. You know the tools. You folks are likely younger than me and are good with the technology. So always know where you are. This is an extremely popular app. As you know, most young hunters today, I have it on my phone. I hardly use it. I still use a handheld GPS. A lot of people still like them, especially of my age. But this, by far, so many people are using it, and there's so many features. So, you know, give it a try. It's just another tool for hunters when scouting. Permit hunting opportunities are great. Different game lands that typically have gotten more pressure are now in the the permit hunting system. And you'll see that when you look at the regulations digest for each particular game lands in the game land section, it'll say which are permit only for certain species. Like it may say turkey permit only, deer permit only, bear permit only, and there's an application process. You check that out. Well, there's an example of a disabled turkey. There's a flipping book now. So you can go there at the bottom, as I marked here with the arrow. It pulls this book up. You can go right through the different sections, small game, rabbit, quail, big game, whatever, and then you'll get to that permit. And you typically, pay like a $8 fee, and you'll get up to like 4 or 5 hunt choices depending on the situation. But keep in mind the deadlines for each species. So you can see now we're getting into that window of March. So if you're interested in getting to those turkey permits, now's the time to do it. Or as has been said, if you snooze, you lose. So take advantage of that. And obviously later on, if you were to miss it, then you got to plan it for next year. But that said, there are game lands that also have turkeys that are not permit. In fact, most of them are. Couple of tips from me about my public land tips. I've been a public land hunter my whole life, rarely ever hunt private property. And that's because I like large tracts of national forest and big game lands where I can have room to roam and I can use hunters in a sense to my advantage, especially when deer hunting. Fingers first, I said it already, the Game Lands Interactive Map georeference PDFs, as I mentioned. Also, I study that topography, including preferred habitats via Google Earth and Map. And then you're able to look outside of the boundaries even of the game land, see what kind of habitat there, as Chris mentioned, brood habitat and things, and see those that are in that area. So if the turkey's using a larger home range, he still has both that, the turkeys still have the brood habitat, but they also have the game lands that you can hunt. Download Avenza OnX, you got a GPS. Then after doing that fingers first stuff, that's when you put the boots on the ground. So believe me, if you do all that stuff first, which I couldn't do 40 years ago, I would go wander aimlessly, and I still love to wander aimlessly, but you can conserve some of that time. You do that first, and then adhere to those game lands borders so you always know where you are. Couple of things on scouting, what I typically do every year, even at the ripe young age of 63. And it is definitely a turkey hunting prerequisite, as Chris also alluded to. The birds are going to be getting ready to gobble if they already haven't. I would think maybe in the coastal regions, maybe they're starting to get a little lively, even though it is all about the photo period, the amount of light that stimulates the hormonal breeding, onset of breeding. Weather can kind of slow things down, but we're getting into the prime time. We're getting into time now where you're going to start hearing them. If you really want to hunt hard, I've always said, hunt preparation in the 365 lifestyle. I'm always doing something throughout the year preparing for turkey and deer season. Now, I will say I'm unsupervised. It's a little bit easy to do, but regardless, you can set up your own routine, eat right, get sleep, pattern your gun, like I said, and you're going to hear more about patterning your gun tomorrow and the importance of exercise. I always prepare for spring and the fall, and that's when I'm looking for birds. One thing I will say that's very unique, a place I hunted, they will typically be on the ridges in this one location through the fall. I will see gobblers and the other turkeys, like Chris pointed out, the group birds, hens with broods, gobblers, but in the spring they shift and they head down into those openings, as Chris pointed out, because those hens are looking for brood habitat, and where the hens go, the gobbler goes. As I say, spend 2 months scouting and 1 month listening. Practice calling in advance, but not on turkeys. If you're going to do any calling, you use locator calls just to get them to gobble. You don't want to educate turkeys in advance, because if you call in a bird pre-season and he spots a hunter, he's going to be less likely maybe to come in the next time. And don't say, well, I'm not doing it on the property I'm going to hunt. Well, maybe somebody else is going to be hunting there. Pattern both your shotgun and turkeys. And by patterning turkeys, you know where they're going. When that bird flies off the roost, if you can pattern that bird and be where he wants to go, you won't even need to call them. And you're going to hear more about that later too. Never be afraid to go in blind. And that means in a place you've never been before and never heard turkeys. I've cut my teeth on going in blind, just picking a spot on a map and going there. Always have a plan B, C, D, and E. And that's because, again, somebody could beat you at one spot. You may not hear nothing at the one spot, so have multiple locations. Know the topography, plan setups accordingly, respect the turkeys, the land, and other hunters. I grew up in a ridge and valley, basically looked like that. You had about a 2,000-foot ridge and the fields. Typically, the birds were in the field, and in the fall, they will move into the mountains. And I've seen that. They will seek out that brood habitat. In a flatter relief area, you're hunting like this. Just keep in mind when you're scouting, yeah, it's a great spot, open for shooting, but any bird that's coming in is probably going to want to see something. Birds have a tendency to hang up. And so that is when you'll hear more about like decoys, the use of, which I do not use decoys a lot at all, but this is just an example of what the habitat in hardwoods could look like. And I don't want to get ahead either, talking about strategies. If you have very rough terrain, like this is a place I hunt in Virginia, you'll often have few hunters. In some places, you have to almost grab a tree as you go along, but the birds love it. It greens up. It's an eastern exposure, and it can be a hot spot. Hard to hunt, but a hot spot. As Chris already pointed out, scratchings, finding fresh scratchings is always a great sign, and those droppings are about as fresh as they can get. And those were gobbler droppings I found in that bottom. But you know what? Those gobblers were pretty silent, so they weren't playing. It was a real cold day, but they were there, and so was I. Again, always know where you are, and by using those two different apps, you will. And there's an example of North Carolina and another sign, what it looked like in Virginia. So you basically had the game land sign and then a poster. So you knew that was the border. And you'll hear more about strategies for setting up like that too. These glades and openings in mountain areas can be really good and serve as great strutting areas, especially if the habitats around them is thick. Turkeys will typically move through any kind of habitat, and they can fly across a stream, or they can, go over or under anything, but you won't typically call them over or under in anything. And they go to places where they can be seen so they can strut with the hens. You may not have fields in some big tracts of wooded areas, but if you have these cutovers or burn areas, as Chris pointed out, these can serve as brood habitat areas where there will be insects in the spring. And I've already seen even turkeys in mountainous region lay their eggs in laurel, or like rhododendron areas, which typically you wouldn't expect. They will seek out whatever habitat that offers some insects. This is also good stuff where you have a previous cut. You have these roads where they'll strut on. So those can be really, really great areas. And the only challenge is they're also access areas, but they're good examples of woodland, especially if there isn't readily available fields, large expanses of fields. And similar to one that Chris had is these make excellent eastern coastal areas, strut zones, and bugging areas. Logging roads are excellent travel routes, and gobblers will strut on these. They will walk on these, and they'll use them as corridors, and especially when it's raining. And we'll touch on that more later. Turkeys like to be in more of an open area when it's raining. So they'll use these corridors even during inclement weather because they feel safer. They can see further away, especially with all the tree moving. Any of these green trails, absolute turkey magnets. You know where bugs are going to be here. They also have the fresh green for the adults. Just things, again, you want to look for. When it comes to scouting, I'll look for setup points. So for example, if I know there's a gobbler down over there, I hear one maybe when I'm doing some scouting, I'll look at this lip. And what I want to do is position myself, and you'll hear more about it later. I want to position myself no further than the maximum effective range of my shotgun away from that lip, but not right on the lip, the maximum effective way of range of my gun away. And that way, soon as I see that gobbler, and soon as he can see, I can shoot him. Because if you're way too far back and that gobbler gets up and you can't shoot, he sees no hen, he's going away. Or if you're too close, he'll come up, and soon as he spots you sitting there, it's like somebody in your living room. He will fly off. Logging road curves are excellent spots for setting up and intercepting gobblers, and sometimes even for setting up decoys. And again, travel corridors for birds. They're just like us. They will take the path of least resistance. So these can be good setup places to look for when you're scouting. Wide open woods can be tough because the birds can see far off. And that's another reason to try, if you can, to use topography or even certain items to hide your cover, or even a blind. Because if a turkey's coming way back and he hears a call, even if you didn't see him initially, he knows exactly where you are. And if he gets to a certain point that is out of the effective range of your gun and he can't see anything, he's gone. As the season goes on, it'll start to get more foliage. That'll cover the ground a little bit. That can be advantageous because he will tend to come a little bit closer because he can't see as far. Logs can be barriers, but they can also be a good thing. If that log were way out there, out of your maximum effective range, even though, again, a turkey can fly over it, jump over it, walk around it, he will typically stop and strut at that barrier. I've seen it many, many times. Barriers represent opportunities. This is a sulfur creek that was next to a game lands, not the parking lot. And I would cross this in the dark, and it was typically up to my top of my chest waders. And I would go in that way because I was less likely to encounter hunters. But at times during the season in Pennsylvania, which had 3 times as many more hunters as North Carolina on average, there were times that if I had set up a coffee stand, I would have made some money. So it was very busy, but for the most part, it was pretty good. So I will typically check that in the spring. If I can't cross there, then I'll seek other places. Like, say, for example, this really safe bridge that was condemned, and you can see the Red Roof Chevy Inn right out there. And I would walk across this. Now, do I recommend you do anything dangerous like going through creeks in the dark? No. Do I want you to tell you to cross a bridge? No. These are just things I've done sometimes to avoid hunters, and typically, but not always, had good hunting. They can come in from the parking lots if you're willing to walk, but that probably would have been like a 3-mile walk, which is also things I've done many times. Then a friend from 25 years of manufacturing keeps a boat along that Sulphur Creek. And now that I'm kind of connecting with him, I can throw that boat in the dark and cross across that creek. And I'll tell you what, it's a lot more scary in the dark than it is in the daylight, but the boat is tethered, and again, it's just another way to gain access maybe that others won't have. Once you're over there, then I hunt, and then I come back, and you can see again the truck in the background. And that was starting to green up later in the season. I've also had places where you could ford your vehicle. This is also a place in Virginia, and I would always double check the water, because if it's too high, it'll float your truck right down into them rapids. So those are things I've done over the years. So a few preseason scouting trips, and it looks like I'm the one that's running a little bit long, but I'll keep it moving, just trying to give you as much as we can. So these are some things that I've added over time, and again, important things that might help you. My hunting mentor, even though I had an uncle that taught me how to deer hunt, my mentor was basically in the form of VHS and DVD. Many of these are still available in eBay, but these, if you can get a hold of, these were two of the greatest volumes of instruction ever. But they would put a millennial, Gen Z, or Gen X to sleep. They were real slow. It wasn't about bang, bang, shoot them up, but it was all about education. And Mr. Ray Ice still does have a website. He probably has some stuff you can get. I say check it out. Always remember that there are no experts in turkey hunting. He is the teacher and you are the student. And that's why you never consider yourself. I've been hunting turkeys 43 years. You never consider yourself an expert. You're always learning. Some of these I actually cheated and got from Chris a while ago too. I call them the 9 tidbits of turkey hunting wisdom. As he already pointed out, you're trying to reverse nature, the natural order. The hen goes to the gobbler. You're trying to call him to you. It's tougher. He'll give away his location and smell is poor. He has fewer taste buds, poorly developed olfactory system. But there's 2 caveats. He doesn't always gobble. He comes in silent sometimes. That's the worst. And if he's hanging out with deer, he can smell. And 3 times in a row in Pennsylvania, I wore myself out on one gobbler because the gobbler always hung out with the deer. They blew in the morning and he was gone. They basically told him, hey, there's some idiot over there with a shotgun. You better leave. That was the end of that. He has a mission. You have a clock. That's against you. Your disadvantage, you're impatient. We all are. We want everything quick. Your advantage is persistence. You never give up. Hunt when you can. Listen, observe, and learn. Turkey is the teacher. No absolutes. And the disclaimer is, everything we're going to tell you, especially over the next 2 nights with instruction on strategies and everything, you may try it and it don't work. Welcome to turkey hunting. And sleep now, you'll need it. If you're an early riser, as Chris pointed out, that's when the gobbling is the best, even though you can hear them later in the day, especially late morning. And sometimes, if you're lucky in the evening, you're mostly going to hear it up front. He is exceptional with sight. As you can see, 10 times better than you. If you're moving, just go home. There's no sense in him even being there. His eyes and ears deserve your respect. He is a prey species that from the time he's an egg to an adult, something wants to kill and eat him. He is paranoid. And as Rupert Medford, one of our colleagues, said, I think his dad had offered this, a deer looks at a hunter and sees a stump. A turkey looks at a stump, and sees a deer. Sees a hunter. Too fast, sorry. So yeah, very, very awesome. What makes a good turkey hunter? All these things: experience, persistence, patience, attitude, willingness to learn, not afraid to try something new, respect for the wild turkey, respect for other hunters. Weaned on public land helps because you are going to learn to work around other hunters and potentially deal with pressured birds. And obviously participation. If you've got a half a day, if you've got a morning and that's it, take advantage of it. That is Chris a few years ago with a wet down turkey. I was hoping to have the numbers for 2023. Didn't get them yet, but this is from 2022. And as you can see, 78% of hunters don't get a turkey, and it usually averages about the same overall. 18% won, 4% two. So it's pretty obvious that it is a chess game. It is tough. Persistence kills turkeys, but it ain't that easy. Chris already pointed this out, not just killing a bird. It is far more. And believe me, folks, sometimes you need to get more candles on your cake, birthday cake, to realize that. I walk in the woods with all those memories on my back. And even if it's a quiet day, I'm still reliving them. Now, do I want to eat wild turkey? Absolutely. Wild turkey and deer are my #1 staple, along with vegetables, but enjoy the rest. As I say this, true to life, and you folks can read it. If you are persistent and you don't give up like any other avocation or in life, you will start killing birds. Time for Q&A. And before we get into that, I do see one question. We will have Eric go over the most common turkey hunting violation for which there is no excuse. And so, yeah, feel free, Eric, hit him with that.
So during our turkey season, probably one of the most common violations that we run into, particularly on private land, but occasionally on public land, as we did last year, is people hunting turkeys with the use of native bait. Deep covered that really well. I won't beleaguer that point, but just know that knowingly using bait to hunt wild turkeys is illegal, and it is a very, very common thing that we see. Another common thing is successful hunters failing to tag or register their birds. That's probably the other most common violation that we see. And tagging and registering your big game harvest in North Carolina, which you're required to tag bear, deer, and wild turkey. Our biologists compile that data, and they use that data to better understand our wildlife populations and to better serve the public, and to make sure that we're managing those species in the best way that we can. Monitoring wildlife numbers is very difficult. We can't mail out a census like we do for the United States population. knowing exactly how many animals we have is very difficult. So keeping track of how many are being harvested is a great way for our biologists to take a temperature of our species and of their numbers and their general health, so that they can make decisions going forward to how best to ensure that we have those species long into the future to continue to enjoy. So please make sure that you take the time to make sure you are tagging and registering that bird. It's a lot more than just, there's a lot of data that's gathered out of that, a lot of very valuable data. Those are far and away our two most common violations. There's certainly the things that we see, particularly trespassing as well, when somebody hears a bird gobbling and it's just on the other property line, and that gobbler just entices them to cross over onto somebody's property they don't have permission. Be ethical, do what's right. Even when nobody's watching, it's important. When somebody thinks of a hunter, somebody thinks of you, and make sure that when they think of you, that you are the face of hunting that you want to portray, that you want people to think of when they think of hunting. We don't want people to think of us as Elmer Fudd, just old redneck beating and banging around the woods, doing whatever we want, not being safe, not respecting our neighbors and private landowners. Be respectful, be ethical. And if you ever have any questions, you can find your local officer's number on our website. You can call them directly, send them a text, email, or leave them a voicemail if they don't answer. We'd much rather you call and ask and have your question answered beforehand than just make an assumption and potentially find out by receiving a warning ticket or a citation.
Awesome. Well done. And thank you so much, Eric. Yeah, our enforcement officers are a great bunch of folks and far more willing to work with and talk to and educate the public. The goal isn't to cite you, and sometimes it's necessary, but they do try, and they've really been trying lately, especially I'm sure with the Go Outdoors app and stuff like that. So have some respect for them as well. So we're going to hit whatever questions we have. Again, hopefully that we're going to stick to topic tonight, because we do have other webinars coming up. And even if you are unable to attend those webinars, there will be the recording that also includes the Q&A. So we'll pull some of these up now. So, okay. Do hens have a metallic color feathers also, Chris? Chris, you still there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Do
Yeah,
hens have a metallic color feathers also?
They do. Their feathers catch the light as well, but they are feathered in order to be more camouflaged for nesting purposes than the gobblers are. So their shine may not be quite as bright as a gobbler's, and their buffy brown feathers are meant to kind of dim some of the flash when they're sitting on nest and incubating nest on the ground. So if you see a flock of birds in the wintertime, if you look out there, you'll see them all kind of shining when the sun's just right. But they certainly are more equipped to hide on the ground while they're incubating eggs. Good question.
Okay, should you use a flashlight when going in the woods prior to daylight? Well, I think I can wrap this one up pretty quick as kind of the hunter for now. Yes, especially if you don't want to fall. I mean, I wouldn't recommend using night vision. I don't use that, and always a light. And what I will say, if I'm hunting hilly country and it's not totally necessary, they make these like green or red lights that are less like kind of, how should I say, shiny. Like if you have gobblers roosted just over the ridge, I'll typically use a green light or maybe a red light, but a plain white headlamp or a flashlight is fine. But I would also say keep it pointed towards the ground, because yeah, if you're trying to walk through the woods in the dark, you're liable to get hurt, and or you know, it's kind of dangerous, especially if there's other people around. Not saying that they're going to shoot movement in the woods, but it's also a safety to show that, yeah, you're a person walking through the woods. So yes, you use a flashlight. Just a comment. Thank you for this. I learned a lot. You're very welcome. Are there virtual learn to hunt workshops? Well, virtual learn to hunt webinars, but an actual workshop where there'd be humans walking around kind of thing. No, I primarily do, or at least not that I'm aware of. I know there's some advanced workshops in hunter education, advanced hunter education, but it's webinars, which are basically slideshows. Then there's these minis that are not virtual, they're in person. And then there's the workshops that are in person. So I would say no. The only thing you're going to see here that's similar to a workshop is our 2 videos on the 3rd night, because that's kind of people moving around, but say no virtual workshop. Let me scroll down. Why isn't the season in the fall like so many other states? That's a biology question, right, Chris?
Yes, it is. We currently have been running off a spring season, gobblers only season for many years. We actually have had a winter season for several years up in the northwest part of the state, several counties. But you know, one of the things that is one of our goals is to continue to allow expansion and distribution increase of turkeys across the state. That comes back to our restoration efforts that ended in 2005. So typically a fall season is an either sex season, and we always working towards trying to protect hens as the driver of our population numbers and distribution in the state. So hens are very important, and we certainly at this time have not worked in that direction because we focus on the spring gobbler season. The tendency on spring gobblers is that we would harvest those gobblers in a season that's timed to coincide with when most of the breeding has been done, so that we can take gobblers out while ensuring adequate breeding during the spring. So good question. You know, we continue to work towards a turkey population statewide that is productive and doing well through a spring season.
How much weight or specific population numbers is gathered from harvest info versus other info such as surveys? And then could smarter birds lend to smaller population numbers that could be unreliable?
Yeah, our certainly our registered harvest is very important. It's a great way to monitor hunters as far as the number of birds, the opportunities that they have, and the success that they have, which comes back to how many gobblers there are. So we track the registered harvest as a way of monitoring our turkey hunting that allows us to see its links to the increase in the population over time. The other surveys that you're talking about, you know, we have done turkey hunter surveys, which get into the sociological questions, you know, what hunter desires are. But our summer brood survey, where we have an opportunity for hunters and others to count the turkeys that they see, to record the number of hens and poults, the young turkeys that they're seeing in their daily travels, is one way that we monitor productivity over time. So when you tie the things together, they're related with spring. Certainly, registered harvest certainly ties in with our productivity surveys, and that's something that we always are seeking assistance with from volunteers. So several ways of looking at it, but everything ties together in really monitoring and watching our turkey population over time.
Okay, besides mouth, pot, and box calls, are there any effective go-to calls that you have found to be successful? In what situation do they change between them? And of course, any of my other my other panelists, if they have quick comments after what I'm going to say, feel free to throw it in there. I primarily use diaphragms, box calls, and yes, slate or pot calls. I do have those, what do they call it? The tube calls. I have wing bone calls. And for me, successful is a relative word because turkeys have different personalities and sometimes things work and sometimes things don't. I'd say the maximum thing there is, yes, I do use other ones, but I primarily use the ones you mentioned. And each turkey will respond to a different sound. So having multiple calls is good. So I will say that I also use a gobble call that challenges dominance, but I won't typically do it on areas where I know other hunters are hunting, because if you gobble, you're sounding like a turkey. Somebody might try to set up on you, especially if it sounds realistic. And the other thing I will say, and then I'll shut up and see if my other panelists have anything they want to add. In the spring, especially if it's an early spring, or sometimes even if it's not, the pecking order is constantly going on. A hen yelp, you know what a hen yelp sounds if you've already tried it, and you can Google it, hen yelp, boom, or the NWTF has an excellent site that I'll be mentioning again later. Gobbler yelps, if you've heard them in the fall, a slower cadence, much more coarse. If you have a slow spring where the birds are getting together again and they're starting to fight, you know, if it's like a cold spring or even sometimes in regular spring, that can be effective when other calls won't, like regular hen calls, especially if turkeys are getting called to a lot. So there, I beat that one to death. Anything to add, guys? Chris, do you have anything you want to throw in there as a hunter? Okay.
I would just say that, you know, one of the things that I've noticed particularly on public lands is sometimes the type of call may not be important. It's how frequently you do call, because sometimes the birds have heard everything thrown at them, and I think sometimes silence can help kill turkeys, but also to try to ensure that we're not just doing what everybody else is doing. I think to take the bird's temperature gives us an idea of what we need to do next. And that really comes from experience and time spent. I think that's the fun part, is understanding what he's thinking.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to add, Eric?
I think those two answers together pretty well nailed.
Okay. And yeah, I'll just note what Chris said. He said other sounds. Scratching in the leaves can be highly effective, especially for birds that have been called to too much. And so, yeah, he kind of keyed me into that. Is there a season limit for spring turkey season? Yeah, we absolutely already discussed that. It's 2 birds. The season limit is 2 birds, and the possession limit is 2 birds as well, but 1 per day. And is it legal to shoot roosted turkeys during hunting light? Eric?
So yes, that is legal during the legal shooting hours. I would raise questions of whether or not it is ethical. You know, sometimes just because something is illegal does not necessarily make it ethical, but that would be a personal choice, I suppose. But yeah, as long as it is within the legal shooting hours of 30 minutes before sunrise or 30 minutes after sunset, then there would be no illegality there.
Yes, and folks, keep in mind that again, going back to what Eric said about ethics, that's something that we all develop in life, just like our own barometer. And our goal is to call the turkey to us. And such a noble bird as the wild turkey does deserve that much. So I would say yes. And believe me, I've passed on every roosted bird I've seen, and even to no success, I wasn't able to call it in. You got to use your own personal barometer for that. What shotguns do you like for turkey? All of them. Any comments from you guys?
Pattern your shotgun. That's the most
Absolutely.
important thing. 12 gauge, 20 gauge, 410, 16. As long as you're patterning your gun, you'll find a round that you'll find success with.
Yep. And Chris, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm still hunting with the same gun that I started out hunting with in about 1998, and it continues to serve its purpose well. A lot of memories with that particular firearm, and I think that's one of the things that we all enjoy as turkey hunters is picking up a gun and remembering. I guess the main thing is that if your gun changes, you need to know it because you should always pattern the gun.
And I will just finally add with that yep, shotguns are part of like tomorrow's talk. And so hopefully you will be able to attend the other nights because it's going to be a lot about gear tomorrow night and then hunting strategies the third night. So you're going to hear a lot more on that. So hopefully you'll be joining us. Is there a particular type of ammunition used to hunt turkeys? We're going to go with the same thing. That is off topic for tonight. We're going to take care of that tomorrow night. And even if you say that, hey, I can attend, then you will get the recording that will have everything in it and also the Q&A. So please try to attend if you can. If you miss night 2 or 3 of this webinar, will it be included and recorded? Absolutely. And as I mentioned originally, you'll have at least between equal to or less than 2 weeks till I get that recording. That's another staff member that currently is loaded down right now that pulls them from the cloud. But soon as I get them, you will get them. And so, yes, they'll be available. Any ideas why many states are declining in population, but we seem to be holding well? That's kind of a good one. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, that's an excellent question because we're certainly starting to hear a lot of things from other states, particularly in the southeast, that have probably been far ahead of North Carolina as far as an established flock. Back in the 70s, we were down to about 2,000 turkeys estimated statewide, and through restoration efforts over decades, we now have certainly restored turkeys across the landscape and continue to see some probably some changes in local distribution and numbers. So we're kind of behind where other states have been. I think it's a very complex question that a lot of states are trying to answer through research, including North Carolina. We have the advantage of being able to kind of see what other states are discussing and trying to look ahead at where we are with our turkey population. So one of the things that's important to remember is that any changes that we see can certainly be very complex. A lot of states have started to ask questions about the timing of their seasons, the length of their seasons, and certainly bag limits when it comes down to the numbers that they're seeing in their harvest. One of the things that comes from a discussion about season timing is trying to make sure that we're in the right place as far as when our season comes in and when it goes out as relative to the breeding the process of a turkey population. So the timing of our season is very important, and these are questions that we've been asking over the last several years through the acoustic recorder project that has looked at some of the gobbling chronology, meaning when does it begin and when does it end, when does it peak. That gives us a better idea where our season might fit into the best timing for our population statewide. And I think bottom line, when it all comes down, we always have to look towards habitat. Brood habitat is certainly a limiting factor in most places across turkey range. So anything that we're doing that's working towards helping private landowners understand and manage for adequate habitat year-round habitat and in particular brood habitat is something that we really is useful for kind of hedging things as we move into the future with our turkey population. So I just looked a while ago, and in 2023 season, we had a harvest of 24,000 turkeys statewide. That's gobblers and jakes. And I think when we look at that, we certainly look towards the future about where we're headed with that harvest and where we would like to go in managing spring seasons.
Yeah.
So that's a really good question.
Yep, and populations of everything, even forests, are dynamic. They're ever changing. And one thing probably that scares me the most is human prosperity, because we limit the habitat. We have to have places to live. We have to have places to shop. But as you know, our state's growing too, and we're going to be dealing with challenges there. And that's why the state also continues to invest in land acquisition whenever it can, because land doesn't make itself. Looking forward to the next webinar and workshop. Thank you. Oh, were you going to say something, Chris?
The only thing I was
Eric.
going to mention was some of the research that North Carolina is working through NC State with over the last 2 or 3 years. So stay tuned on some of the questions that we're attempting to answer when it comes to wild turkeys, breeding chronology, and season timing in this state.
Okay. Been scouting the steep Nantahala game lands and noticed turkeys roost towards the ridge lines. Would you say this is typical in steep, thick terrain? Yeah, typically in mountain regions, usually right off that top ridge I've encountered. But that said, depending on where those hens are, if they're in brood habitats that's in the lower elevations, you can have them in different places and they can shift from time to time. Hens will rule the roost, so to speak, especially with dominant gobblers. Now, when it comes to subdominant ones, and we'll talk some more about that too, that aren't the boss, that aren't the dominant gobbler, you'll often have more access to them. But yeah, any other comments from my other hunters regarding where the turkey's roosting in the mountains? Eric, you have anything on that? Because I know you're in the mountains, right?
Yes, I'm in Caldwell County. I'd say that's pretty accurate. Right off of ridges, fingers off of the main ridge. They like to be up high, and they like to be able to see where they're going to pitch down, right? Yeah. So they're not going to try to pitch down in the middle of a thick rhododendron or mountain laurel patch. They want to be able to see where their feet's going to hit the ground, typically, and at least in my experience.
Yeah. Well, right now, that is our last question. I'm going to move to the last slide. Let me get on that. So there you go. I don't always strut right into your call, but when I do, it's 30 minutes after you left. So there's a good example of being patient. That is the end of the presentation tonight. I say here, and I've always said it before, please complete our post-webinar survey. The way we have it set up this year, if you attend 3 webinars, you will only get 1 survey. If you only attend 1 webinar, you'll only get 1 survey. And we use a drop-down box to make sure that we've covered everything well. So again, 1 survey after the end. So you won't get 1 until the end of the series. I want to thank my panelists tonight. And for the heck of it, I'm just checking if there was another question. Okay, great, guys. Thanks. Again, we try to give you as much as we possibly can, not necessarily to make you the best turkey hunting out there, but we try to give you all we got so you can hit the ground running. And as I jokingly say, if you watch all 3 webinars, if you really listen and watch and learn from all these years of experience between all the different panelists, and you get to the end and you say, you know what, I really can't figure this turkey thing out. Well, there's always ping pong, spectator sports, baseball, because we throw a lot at you folks. So just a little bit of humor in there at the end. We hope to see you tomorrow night. Hope to see you Wednesday night. We're going to get into the guns gear and the techniques. And thanks again to my panelists, Eric and Chris, for being here tonight. And if this is the only one you're going to watch, be safe out there. Good luck. Be ethical. And remember, you are an example for hunting as that individual hunter out there. Thank you so much and have a great night.